Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Va fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire. Thing one tonight, we have a new UN ambassador, a serious position that's been held by some true heavyweights, Daniel Patrick Moynihan, Madeleine Albright, even George H.W. Bush, just to name a few. And then Trump got elected and appointed Nikki Haley, who gave the job some real shine.
I think she's helped make it a much better position, if you want to know the truth. I mean, she's made it a very glamorous position. She's made it a more important position.
After Haley quit, Trump wanted former Fox News anchor and State Department spokesperson Heather Nauert, who on an official trip to Saudi Arabia with Secretary of State Mike Pompeo to talk about the murder of Washington Post journalist Jamal Khashoggi, posted this smiling touristy photo of herself on Instagram in the capital city of Riyadh. Now, though, the search is over. Majority Leader Mitch McConnell tweeted out yesterday the Senate just confirmed POTUS's impressive nominee for the critical role of U.S. UN ambassador.
A native Kentuckian, Kelly Craft. Kelly, how are you?
Hey, I am great. I'm so happy that you're here.
And you probably, as part of your job, work and talk a lot with Justin Trudeau, the very handsome Canadian Prime Minister who everybody swoons over in America. What's he like? Is he as charming in real life as he seems on television?
He is. He's very charming. He is very smart. He is all about the Canadians. He reminds me a lot of our president as far as he really looks after the working class people here.
UN Ambassador Kelly Nightcraft is Thing 2 in 60 seconds. Kelly Nightcraft was confirmed as our new ambassador to the United Nations yesterday, a nominee described by the Democrats on the Senate Foreign Relations Committee as having, quote, neither the experience nor the skill set to represent U.S. interests or challenge the world's most seasoned diplomats on the global stage. But it helped that she's from Kentucky, which is the home of Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, who vouched for her early on. Also helped that she and her husband, the billionaire coal magnate Joe Kraft, focused their dollars on re-electing McConnell in the 2014 cycle, donating more than $1.6 million since 2011 to Republicans. Joe Kraft even kicked in $1 million to Trump's inauguration. And so the coal baron's wife, Kelly Nightcraft, will now represent the United States on the world stage at the UN.
Do you yourself believe in climate change?
I believe there are sciences that are on both sides that are accurate.
You believe that there's science that proves that man is not causing climate change?
Well, I think that both sides have, they have their own results from their studies, and I appreciate and I respect both sides of the science.
It is Friday, the 2nd of August of 2019, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam, and our daily special is Blue Moon Spirits Fridays. That's right, folks. There are ghosts in that liquor cabinet, and those ghosts remove themselves from their confines, and then they repurpose themselves in another form, which we call the French 77, the most balanced cocktail in the history of cocktails. And that is not just this reporter's opinion. It is a fact. And indeed, that French 77 has been thoroughly conjured, not only for our imbibing pleasure, but because we are all truly Nighthawks in the diner of life. Well, we made it to Friday, rested up for the weekend because it's going to be another one of those. Oh, missiles being flown and shot right out of North Korea towards Japan. Trump says, don't worry about it, don't worry about it. Secret calls with Vlad, and we only know him because Vlad's smart. He knows how to pull this guy's chain. Oh yeah, guess what? I was talking to your guy. Our guy was talking to you. Isn't he supposed to let us know? Yes, he does have a constitutional mandate. Ostensibly, he took an oath, but, it's not an oath of Marta. I don't think it's going to go very far with this crowd. But nonetheless, he ostensibly took an oath to protect the Constitution of the United States. But apparently he considers our allies enemies and our enemies allies. I wonder what that means. What is the word? There's a T word for that. There is a T word for that. And it ends with an R. And we'll have to figure out what the letters are in between. Yeah, sounds like a game show. Well, that word only applies if we are in a war. Shall I remind folks that we have had war declared on us? Let's remember that now, okay? We need to remember that. Alrighty. Well, what's on the rest of the menu here? Well, actually, before we get into the curated show, some news just came up. It looks like Ronna McDaniel and others in the leadership of the GOP committee, the fundraising arm of the GOP, apparently, these leaders of the GOP fundraising arm, the leader of the GOP has been accused of corruption by other Republican members. No wonder she changed her name to work for Trump. No wonder. Anybody gets close to this guy, I'm serious, they're going to be exposed. Because I don't know, maybe there's some sort of charismatic influence in which these people get triggered in the lizard brain part that they think that it's okay to just grab and chew and gnaw and take your prey down into your lair for eating later. It's just okay to do that now. And she got caught. Oh, she started crying. And who wouldn't? Especially after you changed your name to work for Trump. Well, don't worry. They give you a number, and you'll get a different name anyway. What's on the rest of the menu here in the Bistro Cafe at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy? Well, starting off at the top, oh man, I'm telling you, if incompetence is a requirement to work in this administration, they're picking them. They're picking the experts in incompetence. And the next manifestation of that is one Kelly Knight Craft. Oh, she's the wife of a coal baron. Okay. And apparently that coal baron had to be bought off. Indeed. It used to be that these rich industrialists would just get their wives like a movie part. Like a walk-on part. Just walk on. Sometimes if you got a lot of money pumped into the movie, then they got to say a few lines. Now they get ambassadorships. Or an ambassadorship to the UN. Okay, well, Republicans did describe Kelly Knight Craft as having neither the experience nor the skill set to represent U.S. interests or challenge the world's most seasoned diplomats on the global stage. But she did give a fair appraisal of Trudeau. Very fair. On the rest of the menu, the Inspector General of the Intelligence Committee has denied a review of Ivanka's security clearance unless Daddy says it's okay. So that will never happen. Unsealed federal search warrants show how the New Zealand far-right terrorist inspired the copycat in Poway, California. And a group of doctors seek investigations of entirely preventable viral outbreaks that are killing kids in Trump's icebox baby gulags. You know, there is just a very thin line between a concentration camp and a death camp. And when we're dealing with Stephen Miller, I don't know what the limit of that is. I don't know where the actual demarcation of that is. Do any of us? After the break, we then move to the chef's table where Britain's pro-EU Liberal Democrats cut the governing Conservatives' majority to one parliamentary seat in a major blow to Boris Johnson. Yeah, his first electoral challenge fail. And the CEO of Overstock claimed he had a sexual relationship with convicted Russian agent Marina Butina, and the FBI encouraged him to spy on her. Wait a second. I thought Chuck Barris was dead. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. Bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com. To the rightish of the page is the chat room link right over there by the social media scroll where it should be. And that is monitored by Kelly Lincoln. And do engage. Thank you so much, Kelly, for taking care of that. If you would then take a gander, yes, we use that kind of language around here. If you would now take a gander to the leftish of our homepage, at the bottom of our homepage, at netrootsradio.com, you will notice the link to our Patreon site. And if you could please, all kidding aside, become a recurring Patreon of Netroots Radio, we are able to take that recurring contribution and stretch those dollars beyond compare. And we've been doing it for the last 8 years, and we would be unable to do this without you. Your generosity is truly what keeps this radio resistance going, and we thank you for that generosity. If you would like to follow Netroots Radio on Twitter, it is so easy. Just go to @NetrootsRadio, and Tom takes care of that, and we are always grateful that he does. I take care of @JusticePutnam, and I post the show notes and links diary on Daily Co's about 10 minutes before showtime, and then I put that link out on social media so that you can go to the source material, all right? We do that here because it's important. It is. If you would like to follow the show on Twitter, go to @CookbookWest and pick up podcasts by way of Spreaker, Stitcher, TuneIn, iTunes, iHeart, YouTube, and wherever fine podcasts can be found. And we're right there with the fine podcasts, all right? Because every podcast in the world is there, even the fine ones, the not-so-fine ones, and then us. We're in the W's, or the W's. Alrighty, much more news out in the world. You know, the FBI, or was it, I apologize, not the FBI, but, it is. It's the FBI have come out with a report, with quantifiable numbers, by the way, that show conspiracy theories like QAnon and, some of these others like the Turner Diaries are a growing domestic terror threat. Of course, these are conspiracy theories that not only do Trump supporters love, but Trump loves them too. It's almost like a chicken and egg question now, isn't it? A theory into and of itself. Well, a growing domestic terror threat. So there's a video of Trump, a clip, at his Nuremberg rally last night. You know, whenever there's a Democratic debate, well, obviously you don't want your people to watch reasonable people pretty much trash the former president who happened to be black. What was that all about? Well, we'll get into that in just a second. But there were some protesters. You know, some people might call them hecklers, but we like to call them heroes around here at Netroots Radio. The style manual actually says anybody heckling the current mobbed-up Russian asset in the Oval Office is a hero, because they're taking their lives in their hands to do so. Boy, a couple of them got, well, looks like one guy got beat repeatedly. We'll see what happens to that Trump supporter who was beating him. But regardless, as the camera was trained on Trump at the podium, I believe it was a CNN feed that I saw, he's gesturing for the crowd to take that crumb out, or whatever he called him. I don't think it was a crumb. And then he made this weird gesture, a real kind of weird, a masturbatory gesture at the guy, like, you know, you're a jerk off, right? Jerk off, and I dirty you, or whatever it was. I don't know. It was weird. Okay. And everybody, you know, pundits and, you know, reputable pundits said, what the hell is that? It's a terrorist fist bump. That's what it is. It's just that whoever knew that a terrorist fist bump would come in the form of a mushroom dick. Yep. Okay, well, we were warned. And some of us actually did the warning. But, okay. So, trashing the former president, Democratic president, who just happened to be the black guy, trashing him for not getting enough done. I think that's a bad look. That is really a bad look. Now look, let's be clear. I don't really think we as Democratic members of the political spectrum need to have an 11th commandment like, you know, the Republicans did during Reagan's years, you know, their 11th commandment. But we should have a first commandment that says, thou shalt not attack another Democrat, unless that Democrat is Joe Biden. Because, look, as far as I'm concerned, I'm not going to give him a pass for how he caved on Anita Hill. As soon as Clarence Thomas issued the invective high-tech lynching, he caved like a soggy white dishcloth. You know, when Martin Luther King was in jail, writing about the moderate liberal being truly the one that you got to look out for because they cave every single time like a white, wet dishcloth. I wonder who that might have been attributed to. Who might it have been? I certainly saw it right when it happened in what we now call real time. Real time. So sorry, Joe. I like you, but I don't know. There's very few things that I hold a grudge over. That is a line that gets crossed. Okay. One is not tipping the waitstaff. Don't do that, or make a big deal about it being done. I cut you off. Yep. Another is the abuse of women and children and people in general. I just do that, you know, and animals too. I mean, it's a progressive thing. Start with like the insects, move your way up into mammals at some point. The next thing you know, you're into bipedal mammals, and we're not talking simians. We're not talking simians. Well, maybe we are, but regardless. Do that, I kind of cut you off. Kind of, I do. And the other one is when people cave on race. I'm going to echo again what we said back in the day, and Randy Rhoads has been with a bullhorn lately. There's no such thing as not being racist. Please, you're either a racist or you're anti-racist. There's no such thing as not being a racist. So when Trump says he's the least racist person in the world, well, that, I don't know. He's still admitting he's a racist now, isn't he? He's admitting that he's a racist and all of his friends are racist. And of all those friends that are racist, he's the least racist person he knows in the whole world. He is. All right, let's take a look at members of his family. Because, as they say, the fruit doesn't fall very far from the tree. I think this is some sort of weird stickery briar bush, actually. It's no tree. Get close to this, and it's going to draw blood. Oliver Willis of Share Blue Media brings us this first offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Blue Moon Spirits Fridays. The agency tasked with oversight of the federal government says Trump has not allowed them to investigate the decision to violate protocol and grant security clearances to Ivanka Trump and Jared Kushner. I always like to put on some sort of like weird East Coast accent. I do other regions too, as you'll see. CNN reported that Michael Atkinson, the Inspector General of the Intelligence Community, affectionately known as the ICIG, sent a letter to several Democratic senators telling them that a review of the decision can only be ordered by Trump, and he has not authorized that review. And why would he? As a legal matter, the ICIG also lacks authority to unilaterally review compliance by the Executive Office of the President with policies and procedures governing security clearances, Atkinson wrote. Trump overruled concerns raised by the White House Presidential Personnel Office after the FBI's background check to grant top-secret security clearance to his daughter. He also ignored similar concerns raised by the FBI about Kushner. Trump initially claimed that he did not give preferential treatment to his family. Of course not. Because apparently at least 25 individuals were also granted security clearances. Now, I want to know something. When was the list of people being granted security clearances given to the Trump campaign by Vlad? Or is it a compilation of several hostile foreign nations influencing this occupant of the Oval Office? Inquiring minds would like to know, but apparently there's a little-known OLC memo that none of us knew about any time. I mean, we knew about the one right after Watergate because they saw how close they got to having Nixon actually being taken out of the White House in cuffs. They came that close. I kid you not. So, draft an OLC memo. The President of the United States, the sitting president, cannot be indicted. Well, apparently, that's not the only one. Apparently, there's OLC memos. I don't know, pigeonholed throughout all of government that just allows this President of the United States to break every law, every norm, and get away with it. This is, I think the term in the industry, I've seen this too, or maybe, I don't know, I have to admit I've seen it utilized more after work by pros in the industry when they're bending a few. But I'm pretty sure the official professional term is it is bullshit. No one is above the law. So let's get this investigated. Well, apparently the ICIG cannot. Now, this issue has become the subject of an official congressional investigation. A whistleblower revealed in April that at least 25 individuals with serious disqualifying issues were nonetheless granted security clearances by the Trump White House. And he can just then say, look, I gave no preferential treatment to my kids. Look at all these other incompetent people. I have a list. The General Counsel for the U.S. intelligence community noted in a separate letter after Democratic members of the Oversight Committee said, what the hell? That a similar review of such procedures was conducted in 2015 at the request of the Obama White House. Given the administration's stonewalling of all congressional investigations since Democrats took control of the House earlier this year, it is unlikely that Trump will cooperate to allow the investigation of his own family's security clearances to proceed. He took an oath to protect the United States Constitution from all enemies, foreign and domestic. Luke Barnes of Think Progress brings us this next offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Blue Moon Spirits Fridays. Newly unsealed federal search warrants have revealed the extent to which the man who attacked the Shabbat of Poway synagogue near San Diego this last April was inspired by the far-right extremists to attack 2 mosques in New Zealand earlier this year. John T. Ernest, age 19, has been charged with 1 count of murder, the attempted murder of 53 people, and 109 counts of federal hate crimes. On April 27th, Ernest opened fire on a Passover service at the Shabbat of Poway synagogue, killing 1 and injuring 3 before fleeing the scene and being captured by police. I don't know. It looks to me like maybe they gave him a burger or got him a burger at Burger King on the way to the jailhouse. They do that when you're white. Well, less than a week prior, Ernest had tried to set fire to a mosque in Escondido, California. The similarities between Ernest's attack and the one that happened in Christchurch, New Zealand, were apparent from the start. Like the Christchurch shooter, Ernest released a manifesto in advance of the shooting, which touted his European heritage and went on a conspiracy-filled ramble about how an other group, in Ernest's case, Jews, in the Christchurch shooter case, it was Muslims, but, they're Semitic, as they say. And they were conspiring to bring down the white race, white genocide. And like the Christchurch shooter, Ernest also attempted to live stream the attack on Facebook. The extent of Ernest's praise of the New Zealand attack, however, did not become clear until this last Tuesday, when Superior Court presiding judge Peter Deda unsealed more than 300 pages of court documents related to the case at the request of 5 news organizations, including AP, and several local outlets. Their lawyer, Elizabeth Baldridge, had argued that the public, quote, has a substantial interest in understanding the motivations behind these crimes and obtaining transparency in the process of bringing the alleged perpetrators to justice, end quote. Previous search warrants that were made public in June showed Ernest told the FBI, post-arrest, that he had been inspired by individuals such as Adolf Hitler and the New Zealand shooter Brenton Tarrant. Well, that's very interesting because the Gilroy shooter, even though he released a manifesto, expounding upon his, European and, Aryan, because he's Persian also, part Persian. So his Aryan heritage of, very, very deep European connections, though. Let's be clear. And that other races, other groups were impinging upon the ability to survive. The white genocide is taking place here and now. And even talked about being inspired by individuals such as Adolf Hitler, the New Zealand shooter, and the guy that shot up the Poway Shabbat. Police right now and the FBI just came out and issued a statement. They really don't know the motivation of the Gilroy shooter. I hate to tell you, but there's a new sheriff in town running the FBI. And I don't think we're ever going to know. Martin of Share Blue Media brings us this final offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Doctors who examined autopsy reports on 3 children who died in U.S. custody slammed the Trump administration for the poor conditions at border camps. After reviewing the autopsies, the doctors concluded that the deaths were caused in part by the flu and added that the wretched conditions at border camps, quote, may be amplifying the spread of influenza and other infectious diseases, increasing health risks to children, end quote. And the children who died, in part because of the flu, were only 2, 6, and 16 years old. The situation is so dire that the doctors encouraged Congress to open an investigation. With so many lives at risk, these issues are worthy of congressional investigation, the letter stated. Another influenza season is just around the corner, and there are other types of infectious diseases that pose a threat to detained populations. Timely action is critical. The doctors, including specialists from Harvard and Johns Hopkins, sent their findings to Representatives Rosa DeLauro of Connecticut and Lucille Roybal Allard of California, both Democrats, of course. The chairs of the House Appropriations Subcommittees, overseeing Health and Human Services and the Department of Homeland Security, respectively. After more than a decade of no child deaths at Customs and Border Protection custody, 6 children have died in just the past several months under Trump's watch. In June, lawyers representing detained children revealed that the children were forced to sleep on cold concrete floors, fed uncooked frozen meals. Some had gone weeks without bathing, and a doctor accompanying the lawyers compared the border camps to torture facilities. Well, that's why in the Netroots Radio Style Manual, they are known as icebox baby gulags. All right, let's get on with our break, and when we come back from that break, we're going to go through weather from around the world and finish up with the stories that we've curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Take Two Movie Review. I'm Mike Friend. This week, the new rule of Fight Club. 2 decades after that film comes a strange, dark comedy that begins like The Karate Kid, takes a turn through the aforementioned, and ends up in pretty much straight-up horror. Our protagonist is Casey, a single, introverted, dachshund-owning accountant who's assaulted by a masked motorcycle gang one night while returning home from buying dog food. After shopping for a pistol in a wonderfully sardonic scene in a gun shop, he decides instead to enroll in a local dojo for karate lessons. It's at this point that we meet the teacher, the sensei, who takes him under his wing, coolly intertwining instruction with pseudo-Eastern platitudes tailored to Casey's desire to, as he puts it, become what he had feared. If deadpan can be brought off with intensity, Jesse Eisenberg's Casey does it. The character, though in his 30s, seems unsocialized and vulnerable, primed, as it turns out, to soak up the poison philosophy of Sensei, turning Casey from shy and retiring to taciturn and dangerous. Sensei is played by the often overlooked Alessandro Nivola from American Hustle and Face Off. He's responsible for most of the unpeeling of the onion as the film gets darker and darker. Pivotal to both plot and commentary in this one is British actress Imogen Poots as the only female in the dojo. She's second only to Sensei skill-wise, but is otherwise disrespected. The movie isn't set in any particular time or place, and cues from the set are either careless or intentionally confusing. Also, you'll note the deliberate delivery of the dialogue, which is reminiscent of a surreal stage play. The Art of Self-Defense combines suspense and humor and earns at least a brown belt for its send-up of pervasive toxic masculinity. This has been Take Two Movie Review. I'm Mike Friend. Catch up with us at take2moviereview.com and feed us back on our page on YouTube.
This is Scientific American's 60-Second Science. I'm Christopher Intagliata. For male black widow spiders, finding a mate is risky business.
They have to go on an epic journey.
Catherine Scott, an arachnologist at the University of Toronto. At the population she studies, on Canada's Vancouver Island, she says the spiders have only a 12% chance of surviving their scramble over sand dunes and plants. And
they have very poor eyesight, and they're traveling at night.
So one way males find females is by sniffing, from afar, the pheromone perfume on their webs. But Scott has now discovered an alternative way males find mates, by subjecting the spiders to a race.
For each male, before he started, we weighed him in on a tiny scale, and we painted him with racing stripes and measured the length of his legs. We had a finish line of pheromone-emitting females, and we released males at various distances from those females to see whether they arrived at a female's web or not, and how fast they got there.
What surprised her was that the males that started farthest, nearly 200 feet away, actually traveled fastest towards females. And the reason? They poach the paths of their rivals, who spin continuous silk draglines as they move.
These spiders are much more adept at walking and running on silk than they are on the ground. So we realized that maybe the males that we released far away from the females were encountering these silk highways left by rival males and running along them.
The details are in the Proceedings of the Royal Society B. And follow-up experiments in the lab confirmed that male black widows are indeed willing to risk a run-in with a rival to win a chance to pass on their genes. A chance that makes it worth traveling along the Silk Road. Thanks for listening. For Scientific American's 60-Second Science, I'm Christopher Intagliata.
I'm probably okay to have one more drink before I drive home. I'm probably okay. I open the window to stay alert. Probably okay. I just popped some gum in my mouth.
Step out of the car, please.
I probably made a mistake.
Probably okay isn't okay when it comes to drinking and driving. If you see a warning sign, stop and call a cab, a car, or a friend. Buzzed driving is drunk driving. A message brought to you by NHTSA and the Ad Council.
Hi, I'm Tom Hartman, and since you're listening to netrootsradio.com, show your progressive side and go to the donate button on the bottom of the homepage. It's progressives like you who power Netroots Radio and keep the progressive message beaming everywhere 24 hours a day. Just go to our donate button at the bottom of netrootsradio.com. Thank you for keeping progressive radio at full power.
Can a person be deported for exercising their First Amendment right to freedom of speech? I'm Bill Newman, and this is the Civil Liberties Minute. The Trump administration takes the position that the answer should be yes, but fortunately, the United States Court of Appeals for the Second Circuit in New York recently ruled that the Trump administration is wrong about this. The decision happened in the case of Ravi Ragbir, a lawful permanent resident who long ago came to the United States from Trinidad and Tobago, and who is the executive director of the New Sanctuary Coalition. Mr. Ragbir committed a nonviolent crime some 20 years ago and has been a model member of the community ever since, having lived, in the words of the court, the life of a redeemed man. He has been granted a customary reprieve from deportation year after year and has not violated any law and wasn't going to be deported. Until the Trump administration began targeting immigration activists for deportation, and Ragbir, a public spokesperson for the New Sanctuary Coalition, was caught up in that deportation net. Fortunately, the appeals court ruled that his public expression played a significant role in the government's targeting him for deportation, and that this kind of retaliation and retribution is forbidden by the First Amendment. Ragbir will be allowed to stay in the country as his case continues in the courts. The Civil Liberties Minute is made possible by the ACLU, because freedom can't protect itself.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1918. That was the day of the first general strike in Canadian history. The strike took place in Vancouver. It was held to protest the police killing of labor leader Albert Ginger Goodwin. Nicknamed for his red hair, Albert was born in England. He became a coal miner and then immigrated to Canada. There he helped organize workers and lead strikes. He was blacklisted for his trouble, eventually making his way to Cumberland, Vancouver, where he found work as a smelter. He helped organize a strike for smelters to win the 8-hour day. Albert had a lung disease that had led him to be declared unfit for military service in World War I. But suddenly, that decision was reversed. With the help of local townspeople, Albert hid from authorities. But he was found and killed with a shot that severed his spinal cord. He was just 31 years old. Outraged, the Vancouver Trades and Labor Council called for a general strike. Soldiers returning from the battlefield were mobilized against the strikers. The Labor Council offices were ransacked. Each year, Goodwin is remembered as part of the Cumberland Miners' Memorial Day. In a ceremony, flowers are placed on his grave. His legacy remains contested, however. For a while, in the 1990s, a stretch of highway was named after the slain labor leader, but the Canadian government removed the signs in 2001. Multiple songs have been written to commemorate Goodwin's life and death, including this one from David Rovings.
Ended up out west by Nanaimo Bay, where he worked the
Brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and the Rick Smith Show.
Days. Let's remember the departed and for us the things they gave, as we're gathered here by Ginger Goodwin's grave. As we're gathered here by Ginger Goodwin's grave.
I read the news today, oh boy.
It's time for Nicole Sandler's What's News from NicoleSandler.com and the Progressive Voices Network.
On Thursday, my Congressman Ted Deutsch of Florida became the 118th House Democrat to come out publicly in support of impeachment proceedings against Donald Trump, bringing the total to half of the House Democratic caucus. Speaker Nancy Pelosi is still opposed to it, with much of leadership waiting for her approval, including Jerry Nadler, chair of the Judiciary Committee, where the process would begin. But his private support for impeachment is one of the worst-kept secrets on Capitol Hill. Meanwhile, Pelosi is currently in Africa with freshman Congresswoman Ilhan Omar. Omar posted a picture of them together and joked on Instagram, quote, "Speaker Pelosi didn't just make arrangements to send me back. She went back with me." The White House Friday morning officially announced the U.S. withdrawal from the Intermediate Range Nuclear Forces Treaty with Russia. CNN has more.
After more than 30 years, the U.S. is set to pull out of a milestone nuclear disarmament agreement, the Treaty on Intermediate Range Nuclear Forces, or INF. Washington saying Russia is cheating. And this is the missile system that the U.S. says violates the INF, the nuclear-capable 9M729. America says it falls within the prohibited range of between 500 and 5,000 kilometers and must be destroyed if Russia wants to save the INF treaty. Moscow denies the allegations and claims the U.S. is the one breaching the deal. The INF treaty was signed in 1987 by President Ronald Reagan and Soviet leader Mikhail Gorbachev, aiming to eliminate land-based medium-range nukes. Today, both Russia and the U.S. view the treaty as largely obsolete because it constrains the two, while non-signatories like China are free to field medium-range nuclear weapons. Fred Pleitgen, CNN, Moscow.
So Trump doesn't trust Putin on nukes, but does trust him when it comes to tampering with our elections, despite the strongest possible warnings from every corner of the intelligence community?
Mr. President, Robert Mueller said last week that Russia is interfering in U.S. elections right now. Did you raise that with Vladimir Putin?
Oh, you don't really believe this. Do you believe this?
You said it last week. Did you raise that with President Putin yesterday?
We didn't talk about that. I spoke with President Putin of Russia yesterday. They're having massive fires in their forests. They have tremendous, I've never seen anything like it. It's very big. I just offered our assistance because we're very good at putting out forest fires, frankly. And if they should need it, I offered our assistance. We had a good talk, a short talk, but a good talk. And I think he appreciated it. So we would be able to help them. These are massive fires like I haven't seen. That was the primary importance of the conversation.
Stunning, right? Do you think Trump offered Putin some rakes? Just asking. Then he went back to a familiar refrain.
Mueller said right now he believes Russia is interfering in the election.
Well, I watched Mueller. I'm not sure Mueller knows what's going on. You want to know the truth. But all I do know is he said no collusion with us, no collusion, and ultimately no obstruction, because it led to no obstruction by a very smart group of people, including our Attorney General. So no collusion, no obstruction.
Did you actually totally exonerate the president?
No.
Isn't it fair to say that the president's written answers showed that he wasn't always being truthful?
Generally. You believe that you could charge the president of the United States with obstruction of justice after he left office? Yes.
The campaign welcomed the Russian help, did they not?
Yes.
And then they lied to cover it up.
Generally, that's true.
You know what gaslighting is, right?
What you're seeing and what you're reading is not what's happening.
The Washington Post reporting Friday morning that the U.S. is preparing to withdraw thousands of troops from Afghanistan in exchange for concessions from the Taliban, including a ceasefire and renunciation of al-Qaeda. The initial deal, it's not completed, could end the nearly 18-year-old war. It would require the Taliban to begin negotiating a larger peace deal directly with the Afghan government, could cut the number of American troops there from about 14,000 to between 8,000 and 9,000, about the same number as when Trump took office. Here's one from the obstruction files. The intelligence community's inspector general denied a request from Senate Democrats to review the policies and procedures involved in the Trump administration's granting of White House security clearances, including those for Jared Kushner and Ivanka Trump. House Republicans on the retreat. On Thursday, Texas Representative Will Hurd, the only black Republican in the House, announced he won't run for re-election. He beat Democrat Gina Ortiz-Jones by fewer than 1,000 votes in 2018, and she just announced she's running again. The FBI, for the first time, has identified fringe conspiracy theories as a domestic terrorist threat. The FBI intelligence bulletin, dated May 30th, describes, quote, conspiracy theory-driven domestic extremists as a growing threat, and notes that it is the first such report to do so. The FBI assesses these conspiracy theories very likely will emerge, spread, and evolve in the modern information marketplace, occasionally driving both groups and individual extremists to carry out criminal or violent acts. And that's just a bit of what's news for now. I'm Nicole Sandler. If you appreciate these reports and the Nicole Sandler Show, I hope you'll consider making a contribution. My work is 100% listener supported, and I can't do it without your help. Find out more at NicoleSandler.com/donate.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the Chef's Table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Blue Moon Spirits Fridays. We always begin weather from around the world along the banks of the Rogue River, in the Rogue River Valley of southern Oregon on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 61 degrees here at the mothership, expecting a high in the mid-90s once again, and truly in the mid-90s rather than the upper 90s. Overnight lows will be in the mid to low 60s. We are currently in clear and sunny conditions. Winds are a negligible 1 to 2 miles. Affectionately known as light and variable here, out of the west-northwest, and out of the west-southwest, and will be shifting out of the west-northwest in a few hours and increasing in velocity to 5 to 10 miles per hour, continuing out of that direction and velocity overnight, and then shifting ever so slightly out of the northwest, but continuing its clip tomorrow. And we're going to have about the same conditions through the weekend. Small chance of precipitation Saturday night, Sunday morning. Let's hope. Barometric pressure is rising at 29.91 inches. Visibility is at 10 miles and relative humidity is at 77%. Weather from around the world is brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people positively live around the world. They got their P-tapes, I got mine. London is 77 and partly cloudy. France is 84 and sunny. Rome is 92 and partly cloudy with a heat advisory and also a flood warning. Oops. Flash flood. Kiev is 72 with a light rain shower. Kabul is 87 fair with wind. Okay. Hong Kong is 79 degrees with a light rain. Tokyo is 85 degrees and clear. Sydney, Australia, in the deep winter in the southern hemisphere, is 50 degrees and clear. San Francisco, California, in their deep summer in this part of the hemisphere, is 55 degrees and mostly cloudy. And it looks like you have a smoke advisory from the smoke that we don't have here anymore. We don't, because I didn't go through the air quality, which is good at 6 parts per million, by the way. UV index is at 8 here. Okay, got that one out of the way. But New York is 80 degrees and mostly cloudy. I don't know the humidity there, but let's hope it's not too humid. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people positively live around the world. Rebecca Naden of Reuters brings us this first amuse-bouche here at the Chef's Table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. And some good news for the forces of good. Britain's pro-European Union Liberal Democrats won a parliamentary seat from the governing Conservative Party, taking new Prime Minister Boris Johnson's working majority to just 1 as he tries to steer the country through Brexit. Johnson, who is expected to face a showdown with lawmakers in the autumn over his vow to take Britain out of the EU on 31 October, with or without a divorce deal, his government already relies on the support of a small Northern Irish party to pass legislation, with only a few rebels in his own Conservative Party needed to lose key votes. The Liberal Democrats, who are calling for a second referendum on EU membership, won the Welsh seat of Brecon and Reddenshire with a majority of 1,425 votes. Boris Johnson's shrinking majority makes it clear that he has no mandate to crash us out of the EU. said Liberal Democrat leader Joe Swinson, whose party now have 13 seats in Parliament. A narrow majority of voters in the area had supported leaving the EU in the 2016 referendum, and Swinson said the results showed her party could win in Brexit-supporting areas.
Je te donne c'est mon amour pour la vie entière. La promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle. C'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer, mes automnes quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers, c'est tout.
Casey Michelle of Think Progress brings us this final amuse-bouche here at the chef's table in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. In a series of revelations over the past week, the CEO of Overstock.com has claimed that he had a sexual relationship with convicted Russian agent Maria Butina, and that the FBI encouraged them to continue such a relationship. One of Butina's lawyers, Robert Driscoll, revealed in a letter to the Justice Department last month that the 57-year-old Byrne maintained a relationship with Butina. Let that be a lesson to you, you older fellows. Look out for those Rusky gals. They might be doing some active measures. Real, literal active measures. Byrne said that he initially met Butina at the 2015 Freedom Fest, an annual libertarian convention. Oh, that's where they go. They can't go to like the liberal places because we're critical thinkers and we're pretty much on the lookout for hostile foreign powers, especially the mobbed up kind. Byrne added that Butina claimed she was working at Torshin's behest in order to build up contacts in the administration of whoever won the 2016 election, saying she wanted to allow Russian liberals a platform within the new White House. It's unclear which Russian liberals Butina would have been describing. Not only was Torshin firmly in the pro-government camp in Russia, but Butina has previously been one of the most outspoken figures supporting Russia's attempts to disintegrate Ukraine, including promoting the arming of pro-Kremlin separatists in the Ukraine. Byrne says he developed an intimate relationship with Butina through 2016, after which it was broken off. Driscoll's letter noted that Byrne said that he had a non-standard agreement with the FBI and that he communicated and assisted government agents with their investigation of Maria. Byrne later denied that this second portion of his relationship with Butina was intimate. The second period, I did it because I was instructed to rekindle it. However, I decided that was not the right thing to do. But I was told where the orders came from, and the orders came from high enough that I accepted the orders. I just want America to know that I didn't lay a finger on her that second time. Wow, what a gentleman. Sounds like he could have been the next James Bond. All right, that brings us to the end of our broadcast period for the day and for the week, but you do know that Netroots Radio is going to broadcast on. And we'll meet up on Monday for River City Hash Mondays. So do stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day and all night for all the breaking news all weekend as it breaks. And we'll meet up here on Monday, right here in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théâtres, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma robe à fleurs sous la pluie de novembre. Tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, l'âge tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goël. Je voudrais toujours te plaire dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme au long de golfe clair. T'embrasser les yeux ouverts dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma robe à fleurs sous la pluie de novembre. Tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum, 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 dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum, 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 dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver, dans mon jardin d'hiver.